What is going on, guys? So in this video, you're going to learn why channel selection is crucial for your marketing strategy. So what is strategy, right? So have it pulled up right over here. A plan of action or policy designed to achieve a major or overall aim. So this is what is the most high leverage thing you can put your attention on, because if you understand how to create a good strategy, then you're going to be able to achieve a major or overall aim more efficiently. So most people, they just like know what they want, and then they stumble upon something, and then if it doesn't work, then whatever, and then they try something new or blah blah blah. Right? That's the first type of person. The second type of person, he's a type of person who knows, because he's so clear on what he wants, he knows he can engineer a billion different ways on how to get to that same aim. And this is something I learned from just someone who I consider a genius. He's made millions and millions of dollars. He always says, anytime you pursue something, you want to create a list of strategic objectives. So what are strategic objectives? Strategic objectives are your ability to get what you want, but not just the outcome, but the milestones in between. So, for example, if I'm going to start a video, right? And I don't do this just because it's just not that deep. Because, if you know who I am, then, you're going to go through my funnel, you're going to go through my website, you're going to read about me. So I don't really care to do all this stuff. But if I was optimizing for, I guess, branding, quote unquote, I would start my video something along the lines of, hey, my name is Harvey Lemus, and I've been in marketing for the last 6 years, and I've oversaw millions and millions of dollars, and this is why you should believe me, right? What does that line do for my videos? It implies social proof, and it gives me authority. It gives me positioning, and that's something that you could implement. And not only could I do it at the beginning of the video, but maybe within the video I could imply that I've been in marketing for the last 6 years, and I've managed, so many different accounts in different industries, and I've seen what works and what doesn't. That does the same thing as that beginning of the video line does, but it's done in a different way. I could do that, or I could also, maybe I'm giving you an example, and I'm writing it up, and then I'm like, oh, and I know this because, I've managed an account that does similar numbers like this. They're around, 5 to 10 million a year. So these are the benchmarks that I know work. See how I didn't directly say it, but I kind of like subtly flexed it? That's another way of doing it. Another way of doing it would be to actually pull it up in front of you, right? I can pull it up, I can walk through it with you, and I can build my authority that way. So these are just so many different ways that you can still get the same strategic outcome of being an authority, right? Being respected. And this is what the strategic people know, right? They know how to get the same outcomes, but know how to do it in so many different ways, where if everyone's doing this, then I don't really have to do that. I could just do it in a different way, and I get to the same place, right? Kind of like if, we're going to the mall, right? Everyone's like, oh, we're taking an Uber. I'm like, all right, that's fine. You guys can take an Uber, right? That's one strategy of getting to the mall. I could just take the train, or I could walk there, or I can ask my friend for a ride, or I can get the helicopter. Uber helicopter, right? I'm not playing, but you get what I'm getting at, right? Like there's so many different ways to get the same outcome, and you don't have to take the traditional route. And this is what the people who are good marketers or people who are good strategists, they get this. They know that. And because they know that, they don't have to do what everyone else does, which is why, there's so many templates, there's so many copy and paste systems, and you could just, you could do that because it works. However, you're not gonna get extraordinary results because you're taking ordinary actions. And the people who get different results are the people who do things differently. So that is what strategy is. Strategy is a plan of action or policy designed to achieve a major or overall aim. And as long as you know, right, that's what strategy is. But what I'm talking about is more strategic objectives, where if you understand your strategic objectives, then you know how to have a more effective strategy, because most people have a strategy, right? Everyone has a strategy, but how effective is the strategy? And that's what strategic objectives do, is it gets you more out of the current strategy you already have. And that's what most people aren't doing, which is why that's super valuable. So dwell upon that, because if you can dwell upon that, you'll probably get different results than everyone else is getting. So what is strategy? Just told you. Second thing is blue ocean versus red ocean. And this is something, there's a book on this that I haven't read, which I definitely should. However, I don't even think it's necessary for what I'm about to tell you. So, blue ocean versus red ocean. Another way that I've always internalized this theory is zig when they zag. So if everyone is doing this, what can I do that's going to be different from everyone else that's going to allow me to dominate? It's going to allow me to separate myself from my competitors and get me different results that no one else is getting. So this is what you got to understand when you're doing anything in life. How can you zig when they zag? And if you know this, then you're going to have a better strategy because everyone's doing the same things. You're not just another fish in the school of fishes swimming. You go your own way. And because you go your own way, you get different results. And you pave the way. You create the trends, you create the movement, and people want to follow you because you dared to be different. You dared to think differently. And that's why I love this whole idea of zigging when they zag. And it's essential if you want to be a player in the game that's recognized. If you want to be a player in the game that has the ability to go number one, you have to be different. This is kind of, literally irrelevant, but not irrelevant, but it's really relevant. It's just, this is something that happened in my experience. Like when I was, back in like 2012, 2011, everybody, like pop culture for music was listening to the super tough guys, right? It was like Meek Mill, and then it was like, Kanye was relevant, right? And it was like, Kanye wasn't tough, but he was like cool, like, tougher on that end, right? He was making like those type of hit songs. And then people like The Weeknd or people like Drake, it wasn't necessarily like popular to listen to them because they had such a different approach to music. It was they called it light skin, right? It was very soft. It wasn't like, I'm going to kill you and take your family's money, like blah, blah. It was very like, it was love songs, but it was also done in a rap hip hop way. So at the time, it shocked the culture. Everybody was like, nah, this is not it, blah, blah, blah. And then fast forward till today, the biggest artists in the world right now are Drake, The Weeknd, and even artists like Justin Bieber. Even though Justin Bieber wasn't a rapper, he was more of like a pop artist, but The Weeknd and Drake were able to do this in this rap hip hop culture, and they brought this like R&B feel to this, to this culture that wasn't that. Now the culture is, everyone listens to Drake, everyone listens to The Weeknd because, they're pop culture now, but at the time it wasn't popular and it wasn't like the norm to listen to them, right? So it's super interesting how by zigging when they zag, you become the leader in due time. You just got to be willing to believe in yourself for that long enough period of time, which most people end up quitting. They don't get the results they see, so they change strategies. Typical. Third thing I want to talk about is A and B testing and your ability to test less, because we live in, especially with marketing, if you look at everything that's everyone's saying right now, it's like you run an ad and you're testing 11 different things. And it's like, dude, how do you know what works? You don't. You're just letting the algorithm figure it out, and you're doubling down on what it knows, which I'm not like a 100% against that strategy because it's effective for growing ads. I get that. But how do you know what is the difference? How do you know what's working and what's not? And when you're not able to systematically test things, you don't know the levers that are actually making the difference. And this is super important because if you know what levers need to be pulled to make the difference, then the next time around, you're not just guessing, you're actually strategically innovating. You're changing things, and because you're changing those things, the change you made actually was effective. And that's how scientists are able to optimize. Compare if I'm testing something and there's 5 different ads with completely different headlines, completely different videos, completely different hooks, like everything's different. How do you know? You don't. So if you're going to test something, test one thing, right? And if you're doing like marketing, there's a balance to this because it's like, okay, how do you know if you're right now with like, especially in the Facebook ads world, it's really popular to test like 8-10 different things. So what I would encourage you to do, to not lose the A and B element of knowing the thing that you're testing, so you're able to know what actually made the difference, to not lose that element, what I would recommend to do is just come up with the same ad 5 times over and then just change one thing, right? So maybe just test the hook, right? Maybe just test the video, the first 3 seconds of the video, not the entire video, just the first 3 seconds or the first 10 seconds. Or maybe you just test the copy, right? Maybe it's just maybe it's the same body, same call to action, but the hook is different and the copy, right? So strategically testing these things is what's going to allow you to know what made the difference and what didn't. Or maybe it's the same ad and you're just testing different audiences, right? And this is something that's the best approach, I think, when you're testing, is just come up with one ad, but just test different audiences, because then you'll know what audience actually performed well. Because what you think who you think are buying versus the people who are actually buying is completely different. And you don't know who's actually buying. You're just making your best guess, which is why testing is important. So like, what's the point of testing different ads to the same audience when you're just guessing they're going to be interested in it? You don't really know if they're interested in it. Compared to if you were to just test different audiences, to come up with one ad and just test 3 to 5 different audiences, and you find out the audience that likes it the most, then you can go into testing the hooks and then the videos and then blah, 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 right? There's so many things to test. This is the most effective way to actually test. Choose one thing to change or to test, and that's it. No more. Last thing is like the fourth thing is channel adoption, right? So what is channel adoption? This is something that the people who understand how to grow really fast get this, right? And if you're a marketer, I'm not against black hat tactics. I believe white hat wins at the end of the day, because if you do the fundamentals for a very long period of time, you will get really good at it. And it's the foundations and the fundamentals that get you outsized returns when added with compound interest. I think that is the number one thing in everything in life, right? If you understand the fundamentals, you will be better than everyone else because you do the thing better than everyone else rather than trying to hack your way to the top. So I definitely believe in that. That's definitely one of my core fundamental principles for life. I would say the one thing that there is an exception, right, is there's always loopholes, right? There's always loopholes in the system. There's always faults. There's always leaks. And your ability to identify this and capitalize is what allows you to get ahead faster. So let me talk about this, because this is super important. This is what top marketers, especially affiliate marketers, understand. When you're playing the game, right? You're playing Grand Theft Auto on your PS2 in 2006, right? Or whatever. You're playing this game. There's always cheat codes, but the cheat codes aren't always obvious. A lot of the times, you actually have to go and identify the cheat codes. And most people, they don't know how to do that. And this is why the people who can understand the game, but try to identify the weak points, the places where you can infiltrate and maybe create a loophole, this is where, people like who do taxes made a whole living, right? So the people who understand the cheat codes can get returns they can get returns or they can get outcomes no one else gets, and it's outsized. But the only bad thing about it is that there's a limit to it, because eventually the loophole will close and it won't work no more, because it was just a loophole and it was a short-term thing. So that's why you can't rely your entire strategy based on discovering the next loophole, because it will always end and there will always be and then there will be a new thing, right? And then you have to relearn, and then you have to do this whole thing, and that's a lot of energy and effort compared to if you were just to focus on the fundamentals. And instead of time being your enemy because the loophole ended, you want it to last as long as possible. You use time as your ally, and you use compound interest, that the more time passes, the better it actually gets. This is what the people that are the richest in the world understand, that they get the concept of compound interest, which is why the people who do the black hat or the loophole stuff, typically, because it's not something that they're just doing, it's like a character trait. They genuinely believe hacking your way to the top is possible, which is not necessarily 100% true, because you can definitely get ahead because of these short-term hacks, but it doesn't last. So that's the balance of the white hat marketers and the people who understand the long-term fundamentals, foundational game, which I agree with. But then I also agree with the black hat of understanding the loopholes, because while you're doing this, you're playing the long-term game, but you're also able to identify the short-term hacks that get you outsized returns in the short term. And your ability to combine those is what makes someone lethal. So if you know how to do both, I think you're going to be able, not even I think, I know you're going to be able to get ahead of everyone else, because you're doing the short term that puts you ahead of everyone else, but then you're also doing the things that you're doing it correctly at the same time, right? You're not sacrificing one for the other, which most people, they do sacrifice one for the other. It's either this or that, and then they just go all in on that. So I have countless examples of, short-term hacks that gives you outsized returns. I'm sure you can look at this within taxes. You can pretty much pay nothing in taxes and then save all that money to reinvest. Or maybe you're playing a video game and there's a cheat code, and then you get the cheat code and you get ahead of everyone else. Or if you're playing Call of Duty, it's an Easter egg. Or if you're maybe if you're doing marketing, maybe you're on Facebook ads, and there's for some reason you're able to get a lot more views by doing this one tweak. And that one tweak, just for example, making a video 3 seconds long. So you can make it 20 seconds and then one person use it once, or you can make it 3 seconds and that same person who would have viewed it for 20 seconds use it 6 times within that span. So now you get 6 times the viewers, which now Instagram pushes your content a lot more because of that. Things of that nature, right? So these are the short-term hacks that give you outsized returns in the time being, but all of that eventually gets patched. All of that eventually ends, and all you're left is with the long-term strategies, which is why you got to do both. So this is why strategy is the cause and results are the effect. So if you understand good strategy, which go replay what I said as the first thing of this video, then you're going to be able to get results nobody else gets, and you're able to outcompete everyone. You're going to be able to surpass everyone because you're doing it the right way. You're doing it, and then you're also maybe identifying things that can put you ahead. So hopefully that was helpful. And this is what the best marketers know, right? And a lot of the times the best marketers don't even know they're marketers. They're just doing it because it's not marketing. It's more of applied psychology. And once you can understand humans and their brains and how they act, then you're going to be able to manipulate the game to get them to take a certain action, which leads you to a certain outcome, which potentially, I'm not saying this is you, but it could lead more money into your bank account. So hopefully this was helpful, and I'll see you on the next one.